You're listening to The Jay Palmer Show.
Oh, yeah. Guys, I'm feeling lucky. I am feeling lucky. Feeling lucky. Oh, I just thought a great idea for an intro. Oh, my God. I need to do that. I think that's, yeah. I just made my decision. You guys have no idea what I'm talking about, but it's okay. So yeah, I'm feeling lucky. I played Powerball last night and I won. I didn't win all of it. I won some of it though. Does that count? Hello? So I won 3 numbers. I won the Powerball in 2 numbers, so I won like $14. See, now this is what I don't understand about this whole game here. So I'm looking at the chart here. If I win the Powerball, if I just win the Powerball, it's $8. Okay, wait a minute. No, that makes sense now. I'm being a retard. Never mind. See, I need to win. If I could win 5 numbers, I would be happy. If I could win 4 numbers in the Powerball, I could still win $50,000, and that's I'd be good with $50,000. There's a lot I can do with $50,000. I mean, there's a lot I could do with $50,000. It's a lot of weed. I thought about that the other day. I was like, man, what would I do if I won like all the 200 million or whatever it is? What is it, like 200 and something million? I don't even. Where's the number at? The number's not even online. That's retarded. How tall is 40 million? Okay, that's weird. Anyway, but yeah, I could like. I was sitting there, like, man, I would go to Colorado. I'd buy all the weed, and I'd probably smoke it. I would smoke it. Why would I buy it and not smoke it? That's like going to a brothel, paying for a hooker, and not hitting it. That just doesn't make any sense. That just doesn't make any sense. So yeah, this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna take my $14 and I'm gonna reinvest it into the Mega Millions, because I think Mega Million is only. Let's see what Mega Millions is. I think it's like 50 million. I mean, I could do a lot with it. That's a lot of weed. Mega Millions. So the cash option. The cash option is 29 million. I mean, I thought about this. Like, if I won. If I could win 2 million and be completely fine, because 8% off of 2 million is like, let's check. Well, no. I guess when you're winning that million, you're only getting half of that, because you got to give the rest to the government. Man, my fingers are like dumb right now. Okay, let's do. It's 100,000. 1, 2, 3. It's okay. Million. 1, 2, 3. Okay, it's a million times 0.08. If I had $1 million and I had an account of 8% interest, that's it. I would make $80,000 a year. So. Technically, I could live off of $80,000 a year with $1 million in my account, and still be good. I mean, realistically, what I would do, what I'm going to do, what I've talked about doing, is I'm doing my whole RV thing. I think I would still buy a house. but it'd still be a small, cheap house. But I could live full time in an RV for probably $15,000-$20,000 a year. Way cheaper than that. I could probably live in $6,000 a year because you have to figure lot rent and stuff. Traveling. Now I guess it would be more comfortable around 20. Because right now I'm living comfortably off of $30,000 a year, so I could technically live off $30,000 a year and still be completely fine. I'm happy. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, I'm not. What if I got more, would I be better? I mean, I'd have more money in my account, but I wouldn't. I'm not like most people, where when I make more money, I have to go spend more money. That's just not the way. That's just not the way I operate. I just don't spend money. I mean, what's out there that's going to bring you happiness? I mean, that you don't already have. I mean, that's just. I've talked about that in the past, and yeah, I mean, I'm for the first time in my life, I'm happy. I've even talked about it this podcast. This podcast, continues on the same trajectory, and if I had the same amount of podcasters now that I do from a year now, I'm fine. I mean, I enjoy what I'm doing. I enjoy putting my mouth on front of that microphone and talking. It's not about growth for me. It's not about material growth for me. And I realize sometimes this podcast sucks, but I'm my goal with this podcast is to be as real as possible. And if real means suck, that's just what it is. I mean, life isn't a bunch of roses and happy unicorns all the time. I mean, that's just a fact of reality, folks. So let's see if I can find it here. So I was listening to my buddy Alan Watts. If you haven't heard of him, he's an Eastern philosopher. He tried to combine the Eastern and Western, or he says that, but he's an Eastern philosopher that tries to bring Eastern into the Western. Not currently, because he's been dead for 40, 50, almost 50 years, but yeah, I was listening to one of his talks the other day. Something that really irritates me, like, I understand it. So I'm learning all about this philosophy. I'm learning all about this philosophy. I sounded real backwoods redneck. So yeah, I'm learning about all I'm learning about philosophy. Like, I'm not going to school for it, but I'm learning about it. I spent like 5 hours yesterday just listening to all these talks. And it's not gonna, other than me being better as a person, like, it's not gonna do anything for me on the material world. And it's kind of frustrating because I'm learning about all this stuff, and in today's society, if you don't have this degree that says your name on it, what your opinion doesn't matter, even though it may be correct. And that's frustrating. That's really frustrating. All right, let's see if I can find this, whatever I was going to talk about here. Woo, that's loud. Holy shit.
People will use a symbolism of give a damn.
Let's see if I can find.
And we put ourselves down, you see. But actually, it's this little funny microbe. Tiny thing. Well, now here's the problem. If this is the state of affairs, which is so, and if the consciousness state you're...
I don't think this is the right one. But anyway, I need to preface what I'm about to talk about here. I'm watching a weird... Oh, here it is right here. But anyway, okay, so I'm I'm obviously into the whole legalization of this marijuana stuff that's going on because obviously it has entered my life as of February. And I heard him. I was listening to one of his speeches. It's called the Wrong Side of a One-Way Mirror on YouTube. And he talks about law enforcement. He talks about the criminal element in law enforcement, and he basically says that they're basically the same thing. And this goes along the lines of the yin and the yang, of where you can't have good without bad, and you can't have bad without good. It's all connected. It's all one thing. And so that got me thinking. I'm gonna all of you listen to this before I.
Types, people who are enforcement officers, begin to. The more you attempt to suppress crime, the more.
Hang on.
Because things have gone astray, and the elders say, "Oh, the young are going to the dogs. We have to lay down the law to them."
This must be the whole thing.
So, the attitude of the Taoists as against the Confucians was that all this discussion of righteousness and propriety and so on was doing nothing but getting mankind deeper and deeper and deeper into trouble. So Lao Tzu says, when the great Tao lost, that is to say, when people no longer followed the natural way, the course of nature, there came duty to man and right conduct. When there were troubles in the state, we began to hear of loyal statesmen. When the family was deranged, we began to hear of filial sons and daughters. And so it seems to be saying, in a very odd way, that it's the rules that make the trouble. And ordinary common sense tells us that the trouble comes first, and then thereafter the rules. Because things have gone astray, and the elders say, "Oh, the young are going to the dogs. We have to lay down the law to them." But it is not as simple as that. You can see, I saw a headline the other day which said, "Cops riot in Haight-Ashbury." And there is a very curious thing whereby, after a while, the law, that is to say, authority and crime, form an alliance with each other. And the more you attempt to suppress crime, the more you stir it up. So that I just want to ask you to consider what kind of person would volunteer for service on a vice squad. And you have a criminal, obviously. You have a very deranged person. And so we tend, you see, as time goes on, that official types, people who are enforcement officers, begin to be the same kind of people as criminals. So that the law enforcement and crime reinforce each other all the time. They have an alliance. It's a symbiotic relationship, because lots of symbiotic relationships are contests. And so eventually what happens is that the government is the most successful group of gangsters.
Okay, I need to preface something here. I am 100% supportive of law enforcement. I'm just going to put it out there. I work with law enforcement. I am myself. I've worked in EMS. I work in healthcare. I've worked with first responders. Totally, 100%. I support them to a point. What Alan says here is completely 100% accurate. Because, like I said, if you don't have good without evil, and you don't have evil without good, or you don't have good guys without bad guys, and bad guys without good guys. I mean, you really have to think about that for a second. And where I'm bringing weed into this, the whole weed debate, is a lot of money. You guys already know this. I'm preaching to the choir here, I feel like. a lot of money comes from weed. I'm gonna leave like the hardcore drugs or the bad drugs out of weed because I don't think weed is a bad drug at all. 100%, I don't think it's bad. I think it's just gotten, obviously it's gotten a bad rap. But weed itself brings in a lot of revenue. Weed itself, we can argue that weed itself employs a lot of prison guards, lawyers, police officers, administrators. That sorts. I mean, it goes a long way. So what I'm saying is, if weed wasn't illegal, you wouldn't have all these people on the other side. So weed has to exist for them to exist in their current role that they choose, like an officer or administrator or whatever. I'm not saying that if weed's legal, or I am saying that actually. So my argument here is, are these people afraid of weed because they're afraid of weed? They think it's bad for you, or are they definitely afraid that they're going to lose their job because weed is legalized? Now, weed itself is going to create hundreds of thousands of jobs when it's legalized. So it's going to kind of offset itself. Obviously, it has. Every other state you've seen that's legalized it has created jobs. And actually in Colorado, a lot of the courier positions that they advertise request that you have prior law enforcement experience. So it's not like if weed is legalized that all these people are going to be unemployed. I don't think that's the reality. It's not. It's what they fear. But at the same time, you do have this symbiotic relationship, like what Alan Watts says, is like they're the same basically. They're dealing with the same thing. And I was watching Live PD last night, and in El Paso, there was a police chase. A car wasn't stopping after the officer turned her lights on, and he started running. Turns out it was an undercover police officer. So basically, this undercover cop ran from the uniform cop. I'm assuming it had something to do with his cover. He didn't want to break his cover on live television, which is totally understandable. But there's probably other ways they could have dealt with that whole situation. So what I'm saying is did he just turn himself into a criminal? Did that officer turn himself into a criminal by running? Technically, running and evading from a police officer is illegal, even though you're a police officer. We've seen that hundreds of times on like body cam footages of officers arresting other cops, and even in uniform in a patrol car. You've seen it in Florida. It's you can't have one without the other, and I'm not saying that cops are criminals. I'm not, but at the same time, you can't have one without the other, and that goes with everything in your life. Like everything in your life is connected, and it's fascinating. It's extremely fascinating. Oh. I hope that made sense. I hope all of that made sense. Let's see what else Alan has to say.
And when we know, we only have to read the history of Europe to realize that places like France and England and Germany, so on, particularly Italy, they were originally just bands of brigands. And certain brigand got stronger and stronger and stronger, and at last he was the government. And it still goes on. So the Taoists we're trying to say to governors, look, lay off. Please leave things alone. Their idea, you see, Lao Tzu wrote the Tao Te Ching as a manual of advice to emperors.
I actually bought the Tao Te Ching. I'm reading it currently. It's fascinating.
And he says, in other words...
Basically, what he's saying here, I mean, somebody in the comments said that he's an anarchist, and I beg to differ. A lot of anarchists want anarchy. And anarchy is just total chaos, and that's not what is happening here. What Alan is saying here is like what I just said. You can't have the cops without the criminals. We can't have criminals without the cops. So, the criminal would not be being chased if the cop wasn't there, and the cop wouldn't be chasing if the criminal wasn't there. I hope you understand what I'm saying.
That the emperor, although he is above the people, they should not feel his weight. Govern a great state as you cook a small fish. In other words, if you have a small fish like smelts in the frying pan, you don't keep jostling them with a pancake turner, because the fish will just fall apart. You have to cook it very gently. See, less cooking is better than more. That's how the Chinese produce such beautiful vegetables. They hardly cook them at all. They have a method of heating them through very quickly and then serve it at once so that they're very crisp. Less cooking is better than more. So, less law. When about 250 B.C., a new dynasty came into power in China. It was called the Han Dynasty. And it followed the Qing Dynasty. The Qing Dynasty lasted for 15 years. The Han lasted for 500. The Qing Dynasty was a dictatorship. And this grandiose military emperor was going to found a dynasty that would last for 1,000
It's something that I find fascinating, that since I've been studying all of this Eastern philosophy, is you still have narcissism and greed within this kind of ideology. Because he just explained that, and like even modern day China today, the modern is it Xi Jinping or whatever the hell his name is? I can't think of his name. He's basically taking total control. He's not following. I don't think, does China even have a religion? I don't think they're not allowed. Let's check. I don't want to talk out of my asshole there. Let's check here. Okay, I'm going to argue with that and say that's not correct. Because it says it's a multi-religion state. But but what I find fascinating is I've been reading into Eastern philosophy for a long time, for like 2 years. Almost 2 years. And it basically tells you to just stop. Basically your desires create your suffering. And you trying to be a winner in everything is going to create. They basically don't desire and you won't suffer kind of thing. And yet they're creating all this starvation in China, and it just doesn't make, that tells me they don't live off of their own values. I mean, either does the United States, to be honest with you. I'm just putting it out there. Americans don't live. Actually, what is an American value? I don't even know what the hell is an American value anymore. It's just such a combobbled fucking mess that I don't even know what a value is. I know my own values, and that's all that matters to me. But can you really say freedom is an American value? I mean, I would argue to say no on that, because there's a lot of what's happening in this country that is not freedom based. It's not. It has nothing to do with freedom. It's just greed and power. But this podcast is starting to go into a weird direction. Oh man. And I what I'm telling you guys isn't what I consider fact. It's just I'm just seeking. I'm just questioning. I'm just putting out there. I'm just asking. It's just fascinating, man. On that note,
The Jay Palmer Show is hosted on Podbean.com. Download the app on iOS and Android and listen anytime, anywhere.
I will see you guys later. Have a good one. Have a good one.